You really think she belongs here? Look at her, can't even hold a pen straight. The words slammed into me like a brick wall. I spun around, jaw clenched, heart pounding. What did you just say about my daughter? I growled. The mother in the designer heels didn't flinch. She smirked, arms folded, as her perfectly manicured son snickered beside her. You heard me. She doesn't belong at this school, or in that uniform. This is for real students. Not charity cases with broken brains. And just like that, the hallway erupted. I took a step forward. I didn't care who was watching. I didn't care about the other parents, the teachers nearby pretending not to hear. This wasn't the first time someone had said something like that. But today was different. Because my daughter was standing right behind me, clutching her notebook to her chest. She'd heard everything. Her lower lip trembled, her left hand twitching the way it always did when she was holding back tears. And I snapped. You think you're better because your son can memorize flashcards and repeat what teachers say? My daughter had to learn how to speak again. She's had more surgeries than your child's had birthday parties. She gets up every day and fights harder than anyone else in this school. So don't you dare talk about her like that. The woman rolled her eyes like I was just background noise. Oh, please. Spare us the sob story. Just admit it, you adopted her because it made you look good. Pity points. I felt my whole body go still. My vision blurred, not from tears, but from rage. Don't, I said quietly, don't you ever speak about my family again. But she laughed. What family? She's not even yours. You picked her off some government list like a stray dog. She'll never be more than that. That's when my daughter dropped her notebook. The sound of it hitting the tile floor echoed through the hallway like a gunshot. She didn't say a word. She just turned and ran. My heart shattered. I didn't chase her right away. I stood there, shaking, staring at the woman who had just casually shattered a 12-year-old girl's spirit. You should be ashamed, I said, my voice low, controlled. But I know you won't be. Because people like you never are. You think love is something earned. Something measured in test scores or ballet trophies. But love? Love is shown. Every single day. She scoffed again. Yeah? Then show it by putting her somewhere with other special kids. That way she won't slow the rest of us down. That was it. That was the moment I realized something. This wasn't about my daughter not being enough. This was about them not being able to handle what it looked like when someone rose despite every disadvantage. I didn't waste another word. I turned around and stormed off after my daughter. She was hiding behind the gym, sitting on the curb, hugging her knees to her chest. Her whole body shook, and I knew that kind of cry, silent, deep, and hopeless. I knelt beside her. Baby, I whispered, look at me. She didn't. She's right, she mumbled. I don't belong here. And that broke me in a way nothing else ever could. You listen to me, I said, putting my hand gently on her shoulder. You belong everywhere. In this school, in that uniform, in my heart. You are not less. You are not broken. You are my daughter. And no one, not a single person on this earth, can take that away. She sniffled. But I didn't do well on the test, and I stuttered in front of the class, and I can't even run like the others. None of that matters, I said firmly. Do you know what matters? You showed up. You tried. You're brave. And you're going to walk across that graduation stage like the warrior you are. I saw something flicker in her eyes. The tiniest spark. And I clung to that. Because I knew, deep down, it wasn't the last time people would try to bring her down. The world doesn't like those who don't fit neatly into boxes. But I also knew this girl, my girl, was going to build her own box. What those parents didn't know, what the school didn't even expect, was that behind all the labels and therapy sessions and medical files, this child had a fire in her. And months later, when she stood at that graduation podium, holding that microphone with trembling fingers, what she did next silenced everyone. Even the ones who said she'd never speak clearly. Even the ones who said she'd never matter. Even the woman who said she didn't belong. Because in that moment, she didn't just belong. She owned the room. I still remember the first time I saw her. She was sitting alone on a rusted metal bench at the group home, her legs dangling off the edge, one shoe missing. Her hair was a tangled mess, her clothes too big, and her eyes. God, those eyes. They looked too old for her face, like she'd seen too much, cried too much, been ignored too long. The caseworker had warned me. She's nonverbal most days. Diagnosed with cerebral palsy. There's trauma too, obviously. She bites sometimes when she's scared. No known family. No prior attachments. It'll be difficult. Difficult. That word kept echoing. Like it was supposed to scare me off. But I wasn't scared. I knelt down in front of her that day. I didn't reach out. I didn't speak. I just sat there. Quiet. Present. Minutes passed. Then one small hand reached out and touched the hem of my coat. It wasn't much. But it was everything. Because in that tiny gesture, I saw what no report or diagnosis could show. I saw hope. And in that moment, I made a decision. One that changed both of our lives forever. I'll take her, I said. The caseworker blinked. You're serious? I smiled through the lump in my throat. She doesn't need a savior. She just needs someone to stay. And I stayed. Through every sleepless night. Every meltdown. Every medical appointment that ended with more questions than answers. I stayed through the first time she let out a sound, just a hum, a shaky vibration from her throat that barely counted as noise. I stayed when she learned how to walk with braces, one wobbly step at a time, falling over and over again but never giving up. And I stayed on the days she shut down completely, curled up in the corner, unwilling to be touched. There were so many moments where I wondered if I was enough. I wasn't rich. I wasn't married. I didn't have some grand plan. But I had love. And I gave it in buckets. In the form of pancakes at midnight, and therapy games disguised as playtime, and sticky notes on her mirror that said you were brave, even when she didn't believe it. I celebrated every single milestone like it was a miracle. Because for us, it was. The first time she said my name, it wasn't perfect. It came out as Mai. But it was mine. People didn't understand. Why her, they'd ask. Why not a baby? Why not someone without all that? They didn't say it out loud, but I knew what they meant. Without all that baggage. Without all that need. And I would just smile. Because they couldn't see what I saw. They didn't see how she made paper hearts and taped them to my office door. They didn't see how she counted the stars every night and named each one after a person who had left her, so she could remember them without hate. They didn't see her soul. But I did. School was always a battlefield. Every year, a new teacher would tell me how we'll try to integrate her, but she may not be able to keep up academically. She always proved them wrong. She learned to read slowly, sounding out one letter at a time. She learned to type with her right hand when the left couldn't hold a pencil anymore. She learned to speak in full sentences, even though she still stuttered when she got nervous. And most importantly, she learned not to apologize for existing. That took the longest. Still, the stares never stopped. Parents whispered at pickup. Kids snickered in the lunchroom. She'd come home and ask me, why don't they like me? I'd tell her the truth. Because people fear what they don't understand. But that's not your problem to fix. Your job is to shine, no matter who tries to dim you. And she did. Despite everything, she kept shining. By the time she reached middle school, she had become a quiet storm. She wasn't loud. She wasn't flashy. But she was undeniable. She got straight B's. She sang in the choir, even if her voice cracked sometimes. And she made one friend. Just one. But a good one. The kind that held her hand when she panicked during a fire drill. It was enough. Until they showed up. The perfect parents. The perfect kids. The ones who thought the school was theirs to run. They never said anything directly at first. Just looks. Avoidance. Fake smiles that vanished the second I walked by. Then came the comments. The jokes. The laughter. And eventually, the hallway confrontation. That moment didn't come out of nowhere. It was years in the making. A storm that had been building since the day I signed those adoption papers. They didn't want her to belong. Because if she belonged, then everything they believed about worth and success and perfection would crumble. But I had news for them. She wasn't going to just belong. She was going to rise. And she was going to do it on her own terms. What they didn't know, what they never expected, was that the girl they mocked for needing help would one day be the one holding their future in the palm of her hand. And at that graduation ceremony, she wouldn't just walk across that stage. She'd change everything. It started with a whisper. Not a loud declaration. Not some big speech. Just a quiet sentence, one night after dinner while we were doing the dishes. She turned to me and said, "I want to speak, at graduation." I froze, dish in my hand, water still running. I thought I misheard. She had never been one for public speaking, not in front of strangers, not even in front of crowds that loved her. Her words still stumbled sometimes, especially when she was nervous. Her voice, though stronger now, still carried the hesitation of a girl who was once silenced for years. But she stood there, arms trembling, chin lifted. And I knew. She meant it. "You sure?" I asked gently. She nodded. "They don't know who I am. They just think I'm that girl. The one who gets extra help. The one in the back of the room. I want to tell them. All of them. I want to tell them I'm more." Something shifted in me that night. I looked at her, this young woman with fire in her eyes. And I didn't see my fragile little girl anymore. I saw a fighter. And she was ready for war. We started preparing the very next day. Every morning before school and every night after dinner, she'd stand in the living room, gripping her note cards like they were weapons. Her hands would shake. Her voice would crack. But she kept going. Over and over, she practiced the words. Rehearsed the pauses. Faced down her own fear like it was just another bully in the hallway. She wrote the speech herself. I offered to help, but she said no. If I'm going to do this, they need to hear me. Not you. Not my therapist. Not a polished version of who they want me to be. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about proving people wrong. It was about owning her space, in front of all the kids who whispered, all the parents who looked down on her, and the system that kept telling her she would never make it. But not everyone was happy. One day, she came home with a red face and clenched fists. I could see it before she even spoke. "They left," she said, slamming her bag down. At the meeting. When they announced I'd be speaking, some of the parents rolled their eyes. One of them even asked if there was a backup speaker in case I couldn't handle it. I swear, I saw red. I wanted to storm into that school and scream. But she held up her hand and said something I will never forget. "Let them laugh now. They'll be silent soon enough." And so we kept going. There were setbacks. One morning she woke up and refused to speak at all, paralyzed by anxiety, old fears bubbling up. I sat beside her bed and told her, "You don't owe them anything. You don't have to prove your worth to anyone who's already chosen not to see it." She looked at me with tears in her eyes and whispered, "But I want her to see." "Who?" I asked. She stared out the window. "Mrs. Granger." I blinked. Your third-grade teacher? She nodded. The one who said I'd never read above a second-grade level. I heard her tell another teacher. I never forgot. I felt my chest tighten. So many wounds. So many cuts she carried that I never even saw. But she remembered them all. Not with bitterness, with resolve. Graduation week arrived like a thunderstorm. Nervous energy in the house. The dress she picked, dark blue, her favorite. Hair pinned up, braces on her ankles polished and shining. But that morning, as she stood in front of the mirror, her hand hesitated on the doorknob. What if I stutter? She asked quietly. What if they laugh again? I stood behind her and fixed the back of her collar. Then stutter. Stumble. Breathe through it. And keep going. She met my eyes in the mirror. They don't get to win, I said. Because you're still standing. That's the victory. The auditorium was packed. Hundreds of people. Teachers. Students. Parents. The same ones who used to snicker behind their coffee cups when they saw her in the drop-off line. I sat near the front. My hands were shaking. She was backstage, alone, waiting for her cue. One by one, students got up and gave their speeches. The usual stuff, gratitude, dreams, shout-outs to their friends. Then the principal walked up and tapped the mic. Our next speaker is someone very special. Someone who's walked a long road to stand here today. Please welcome Maya Ellis. The room shifted. I saw heads turn. People whisper. And then, she walked out. Slowly, but without help. Each step steady, even with the braces. She reached the podium. And she stood there. Silent for a moment. Letting the silence build. Letting every eye fall on her. No stutter. No fear. Just presence. And then, she began. My name is Maya. You might not know me. Or maybe you think you do. Maybe I'm just the girl who walks slow. Or who gets extra time on tests. Or who doesn't talk much in class. But that's not all I am. I am not broken. I am not less. I am not your pity project. I am someone who wasn't supposed to speak. But I'm speaking. Right now. I was never supposed to read. But I read every single day. Books. Essays. Dreams. I was told I'd never graduate with the rest of you. But guess what? I'm right here. And if I can be here, then maybe you'll think twice, before judging someone's worth by what they can't do. She paused. Took a deep breath. I was adopted by a woman who believed in me when no one else did. She didn't see a diagnosis. She saw me. She fought for me when I couldn't even speak. And today, I speak not just for myself, but for every kid who's been overlooked, laughed at, dismissed. We are not invisible. We are undeniable. You could hear a pin drop. Maya stood at that podium like she was born there. She didn't just speak. She commanded. The same parents who once mocked her were now frozen in place, jaws slack, hands slowly rising into stunned applause. Some even stood up. One by one. Until the whole room was on its feet. And me? I cried. Not because she made a great speech. But because she reclaimed her name. Her space. Her worth. And no one could take that away from her ever again. They say silence is loudest when it comes after noise. And that day, after Maya's final word echoed off the auditorium walls, the silence was deafening. Not the kind of silence that comes from indifference. No, this was a silence of reckoning. The kind where people suddenly see what they missed for years. A silence born from shame. Then someone clapped. Slow at first. Then another. And another. Until the entire auditorium stood on its feet, parents, students, teachers, all applauding the girl they once whispered about. All clapping for the voice they thought would never matter. But I wasn't watching them. I was watching her. She stood at the podium, not smiling, not crying, just breathing. Shoulders back, head high, as if she had just laid 1,000 ghosts to rest. It was the look of someone who finally made peace with the mirror. And yet, that wasn't the end of it. Because when the ceremony ended, the real moment happened. I was making my way through the crowd to find her, when I heard someone call out behind me. "Excuse me. Ms. Ellis?" I turned around. It was Mrs. Granger. Older now, but her face was exactly as I remembered, tight bun, pearl earrings, the same clipped voice she used back when she called my daughter too far behind to catch up. I almost didn't stop. But something in her eyes made me pause. She looked smaller. Like someone who realized, just a little too late, that she'd misjudged a masterpiece. "I just wanted to say," she began, stumbling over her own pride, "what Maya did today, it was remarkable. Truly. I had no idea she'd grown so much." I looked her dead in the eyes. "No," I said. "You just never looked long enough to see." She opened her mouth like she wanted to defend herself, like she was about to reach for that same old excuse, "We did what we could." But I wasn't there to make her feel better. So I walked away. And left her standing there in the middle of her regrets. When I finally found Maya, she was surrounded by students. Some were hugging her. Some were just standing there, blinking, like they didn't know what to say. A few even apologized. One boy, who used to mimic her limp in the hallway, took off his graduation cap and held it in his hands like it was suddenly too heavy. "I'm sorry," he said, voice cracking. "I thought I was being funny. But I wasn't. I was just scared of someone stronger than me." Maya didn't yell. Didn't gloat. She just said, "Now you know." That was it. She didn't need revenge. Because growth had already done what revenge never could. As we were leaving, I saw a group of parents huddled by the exit. Some of them still looked stunned. Others looked uncomfortable, the way people do when the world flips and they realize they were on the wrong side of history. One of them, the very same woman who once whispered to her daughter, "Don't play with that girl, she'll slow you down," stopped me. Her eyes darted like she wasn't sure if she should even speak. "She was incredible," she said. I didn't respond. "I didn't know," she continued. "Back then. I didn't realize." "You didn't want to," I replied calmly. "There's a difference." And I walked away. That night, at home, Maya sat by the window. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't crying. She was quiet. That deep kind of quiet that only comes after you've emptied your soul onto a stage and left it there. I handed her a cup of tea and sat beside her. We watched the sky turn orange. "You did it," I said softly. She didn't answer right away. Then finally, she turned to me and whispered, "Was it enough?" I looked at her, at the girl who once couldn't hold a pencil, who had now held a room in the palm of her hand. "It was more than enough," I said. "You didn't just speak. You shattered walls." She nodded, slowly. "Then why do I still feel like there's more I have to do?" I smiled. "Because you're not done. This was never the end. This was just the beginning." And I was right. Because that speech didn't just stir a room. It sparked a movement. The school posted it online. Within days, it went viral. Comments poured in from people across the country, parents, teachers, even therapists, thanking Maya for giving a voice to what so many others had felt in silence. A local organization for special education advocacy reached out. They wanted her to speak again, at a conference. And then another school asked. Then a podcast. Then a national interview. But through it all, she never changed. She still walked slow. Still read things twice. Still took her time forming words. But now, people listened. Now, her pauses weren't seen as weaknesses. They were weight. Every word she spoke landed like thunder. But the most unexpected moment came 1 week later. I was sorting mail when I found a letter addressed to her. No return address. Inside was a note. Handwritten. Scrawled in shaky, ink-blotted script. Dear Maya. I saw your speech. I cried. I didn't even know I could still cry. I have a daughter too. She was born with challenges. We were told she wouldn't walk, wouldn't talk, wouldn't matter. I gave up on her before I gave her a chance. But after watching you, I want to try again. Thank you. You gave me back my daughter. A father who finally sees. I handed her the letter. She read it. Said nothing. Then folded it neatly and slid it into her drawer. She didn't say a word. But her eyes glistened in the light. And I knew, her purpose had just begun. 1 year later, I sat in an auditorium again. But this time, it wasn't the school gym or a local ceremony. No folding chairs. No bitter glances. No whispered judgments hiding behind polite smiles. This was a national conference. Thousands of people. Teachers, parents, doctors, advocates, all gathered under one roof. And my daughter, my Maya, was the keynote speaker. Funny how the same world that once doubted her now lined up to hear her speak. She stood at the podium, dressed in a navy blue suit we saved up for, wearing the same necklace I gave her on the day she took her first independent step. But what struck me wasn't her clothes, or the cameras flashing, or the giant screens projecting her name. It was the calm. She stood there, shoulders relaxed, eyes steady, like she belonged there. Like this wasn't her comeback, it was her calling. And when she spoke, she didn't talk about her pain. She talked about possibility. About the power of being seen. The difference one teacher, one friend, one moment can make. She didn't beg for sympathy. She challenged the system. She said, I wasn't broken. I was unread. She paused. Let that line breathe. Then she looked out over the crowd, 1,000 strangers holding their breath for her next word, and asked, how many more children are we failing, just because we don't understand their language? A few people gasped. Some clapped. But me? I cried. Because that was the moment I knew Maya had gone beyond surviving. She was now changing the world that tried to bury her. After her speech, a woman approached us backstage. She looked shaken. She clutched her purse like it was her anchor. I was a principal, she said softly. At a school like yours. I denied children like your daughter every single year. I thought I was protecting the system. Now I realize. I was protecting my own comfort. She looked Maya in the eyes. I'm sorry. I didn't know what I was doing. Maya held out her hand. And that woman, that once proud figure of authority, took it with both of hers, trembling. That's what real power looks like. Not revenge. Redemption. When we got home that night, Maya and I sat under the stars like we used to when she was little. We didn't say much. Didn't need to. The sky was clear. The air was quiet. And for the first time in a long time, we weren't waiting for the other shoe to drop. I don't hate them anymore, she whispered suddenly. Who? I asked. The people who laughed. The ones who said I'd never be enough. I turned to look at her, and she just smiled. Because now I understand, they didn't laugh because I was weak. They laughed because they were scared I might be stronger than they ever were. The next day, she got a call. It was from the Department of Education. They wanted her to join a youth advisory board, to help shape policy for students with learning disabilities. They said her voice was a perspective the country needs. I watched her nod, calm as ever, like it was just another step. But for me? It was the mountain. All the years we struggled. All the nights I held her through sobs. All the mornings I told her to keep going, even when I didn't believe we'd make it. This was the moment it all mattered. I used to think that the world needed to change so Maya could have a place in it. Now I realize, Maya was born to change the world. Her journey wasn't about fitting in. It was about standing out, so others like her would never feel alone again. And to think, they mocked me. They said I was wasting my life by adopting a child who would never make it. They said she'd be a burden. A mistake. A tragedy. But now, when I see the lives she's touched, when I see the letters she receives, when I hear a child's parent say, "Your daughter gave my daughter hope," I just smile. Because the very child they all doubted turned out to be everyone's reason to believe. So now I ask you this. Before you write someone off as too slow, too different, or too broken, are you really seeing their limits, or just your own lack of vision?